Louise Mallard's American Dream. Kate Chopin, the author of The Story of an Hour, was born in St. Louis in 1851. In 1870, she married a Louisiana businessman. When he died 12 years later, he left her and their 6 children in major financial difficulties. She then began writing short stories centered around themes of class and gender. Her most famous work, The Awakening, was published in 1899. Reviewers called it unpleasant and immoral, and the public received it with outrage. She responded to this criticism in a letter.
Having a group of people at my disposal, I thought it might be entertaining, to myself, to throw them together and see what would happen. I never dreamed of Mrs. Pontellier making such a mess of things and working out her own damnation as she did. If I had had the slightest intimation of such a thing, I would have excluded her from the company. But when I found out what she was up to, the play was half over, and it was then too late.
After her criticism, Chopin did not write much more, possibly because she realized she was unable to write about life as she saw it. The Story of an Hour explores identity and self-determination and what that meant for women at the time. Women did not have the right to vote, and the law at the time granted one person, the man, the right to own and dominate another, the woman. The story starts with Mrs. Mallard, known only by her husband's last name. When the story progresses, the reader finds out her first name, Louise. When that happens, she comes alive as an individual in her own right. The story tells us little about the marriage itself. It mentions her husband's kind, tender hands, and the face that had never looked save with love upon her. And yet she had loved him, sometimes. Often she had not. What did it matter? This emphasizes the fact that it isn't the specifics of a particular relationship, but the conventions and structure of marriage in general and how this affected women that mattered. For Louise Mallard, there was a huge relief in the thought that there would be no powerful will bending hers, in that blind persistence with which men and women believe they have a right to impose a private will upon a fellow creature. Men and women. This isn't anything specific that Brentley has done, nor is this an issue for women alone. No one has a right to impose a private will on someone else, whatever the circumstances. Louise now had years to come that would belong to her absolutely, and there would be no one to live for during those coming years. She would live for herself. This is Louise Mallard's and Kate Chopin's American Dream, the freedom to determine our own lives, according to our own principles and our own values. Many people found the story uncomfortable. On the surface, it seems Louise is glad of her husband's death. However, it isn't happiness over his death. It is the desire for freedom to live her life the way she wants that is giving Louise happiness. Once Louise recognizes her husband's death gives her this freedom, she becomes excited, repeating that word, free, over and over again. At the end, Louise realizes that her dream of being able to determine her own life, a dream she maybe did not even realize she had until it was offered to her, is not going to be fulfilled. That realization kills her. The irony, of course, is that though she dies of shock and grief over losing her freedom, the doctors and society in general misinterpret this, thinking she died of shock and joy. The reality for most women in the 19th century was that they were not free. If they were lucky, their desires matched what society wanted from them, or their husbands or fathers allowed them to pursue their interests. It is not hard to see the difference between having the right to make your own choices and having to depend on someone else's kindness to allow you the choice that you want. We all want the freedom to make our own choices, to decide what we want to do and who we want to be, and we all want the right to determine our own identity.